What's going on, world? Welcome back to another edition of the Black Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Reg. Joined today with me is a special guest. I don't botch nobody's introduction. I let them introduce themselves and their credentials because I want to make sure everybody get their flowers that they worked hard for. So go ahead and introduce yourself, brother.
So my name is Khalid Younger. I have a master's in healthcare administration. I'm also a registered nurse with my BSN from Penn State University. I've been a leader in healthcare and academic medical centers throughout Philadelphia. I've traveled as a registered nurse. I worked in healthcare starting from environmental services again until I was director of services. So any and everywhere through healthcare. And I came to this point through first and foremost, I'm from North Philadelphia, right 22nd and Lippincott Street, and grew up there, grew up in the streets, went to prison for 5 years, came home, did 5 years parole, walked that off, and did everything else that I mentioned previously. And that's who I am.
Oh, we got a lot to unpack and all of that you just said, man. Because we gonna slow walk it up there. So how'd you get into, and again, you've been in the field probably longer than I have been, in a nursing field, because I know that's usually like a woman, and even if we want to go even more, it's usually a white woman dominated field. How'd you get in that field? What inspired you to get in that field, and how is it working as a black man or almost as the minority in that field? I know it's a loaded question.
I'm gonna break it down in two parts. How I got there first and foremost. In 2008, as I mentioned, I came home from prison. I got a job in 2009 working in environmental services in Abington Hospital. And I started working there. It was, I'm just coming home from prison. So I'm working like a madman. I'm working faster than everybody else. I'm hungry. I'm just finishing eating Chi-Chi's, So I'm working really hard anyway. I get introduced to the operating room because I was, doing a solid job in environmental service. They asked me to come up to the operating room. That was my first time ever being in an operating room. Excuse me. And I was in an operating room, got up there, and it like blew the doors off me, man. It just was like, this was fabulous, like to be able to see surgeries and see physicians and surgeons and nurses perform their job in anesthesia. I didn't even at the time know about anesthesia. So long story short, I just thought it was fabulous. My job was to clean the operating rooms, transport patients. And I got to a point where I just felt like, all right, what's next? And I just looked out and I'm looking at, like you said, it's all white nurses, white men as surgeons, and then white men and women as the anesthesia providers. And I'm like, none of us there. And I'm like, man, I got it. I'm just going to do it. So one day I met the Abington HR director, and I was like, I got a felony, I'm looking to do more. I don't know what I can do, but I got to do something. And I never forget, she's like, well, you can't do certain nursing jobs like home health care with the felony because of the elderly acts and this, that, and the third, but you can work in hospitals. And she's like, well, you would have to go see a nursing board at the end, and there's no guarantee that they would give you a nursing license, but you can try to go to school. And I'm like, well, nothing beats a failure but a try. So so I went on and registered for nursing school at Abington. Well, no, let me back up. I actually went to Montgomery County Community College and did all my prereqs and credits.
Okay.
I took my little had my little Toyota at the time. No, I had a little Nissan at the time that barely made it up to Monco, and I just did the prereqs, man. And to answer your question, how did I get there? I just decided to put my head down. It was a term like, man, I wanted to do something. I wanted to be a little bit more impactful, and I also wanted to. It wasn't us there, so I got to a point. It was like, I'm expected to be in environmental services. I'm expected to be there. I don't want to be there. Mm-hmm. And so I just decided to go. I took that chance. And then how has it been? Whew. Whew, sigh of relief. It's tough. It's tough. But it grew me up a lot, right? Like, I always say, like, for me, I don't know, particularly, I don't know what racism is, but for me, and that's going to sound bizarre. What I'm saying is, I don't know the difference between racism and somebody just being unempathetic and ignorant. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not one of those people that stick around to figure out which one it is. So
right.
If you're a dick, you're a dick.
Right.
And so growing up in the OR, I realized that there's a lot of dick characteristics that might not necessarily be racist, but it certainly is unempathetic to our plight and our conditions and where we are. And so there's a lot of people willfully ignorant, and trying to navigate that system was difficult, right? And to be seen in that environment was challenging.
So I can let's just say there's always an unhidden language amongst Black men that he said a lot just now without saying what he could have said in those situations. And so even with the whole racism and that's their burden, because we don't have to deal with that, or they don't have to deal with that. They just, oh, he's a dick, but they don't got to say, oh, he doesn't like me because of what color I am. We got to kind of own that. And it's like, why do we got to figure that out? That's your problem. Yeah. And the second part of that is too, there was some retraining of the mind for you. It had to be. You were a returning citizen. You were coming back into the community, and you decided to shift so much so that the way you would have responded to something or someone that was a dick back in the day is way different than how you got to respond in this professional world of like working together. Mind you, I'll talk about that another time, but I'm still learning that. Like, go ahead.
I think that was the maturation, right? I think that's the maturation I'm saying that I had to learn, is that, you know, and it's wild because I feel like intentionally we're triggered a lot. And so trying to figure out why we're being triggered, it doesn't really matter. The intent is to get us off our rocker, right? And off our path and what we need to do for ourselves. So the maturation was learning how to compartmentalize that, right? And still get done what I needed to get done. I think that's what I had to learn. And that's what it taught me. Like, I'm on a mission and I know I can get there now. Now it's just a matter of myself, right? And not imploding on these people because of the struggles that they have. That's not mine. That's theirs.
Yeah, that was a word right there. So what advice do you have for a person that's just off the streets, that just know one way of doing things and this is how I do it? Like, what's that first step for me? I just came out of prison. I'm coming back, and that's how you know some of these things are set up to fail. And I'm coming back with that mindset that got me into it, and I'm coming back in an environment that helped create it. How do I navigate that and still create a new path for myself to get the success that I was trying to get in the first place, if that makes sense?
How do I navigate? How do I get off that? I can't I can't even sit here in front like it's always been perfect. It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for me. Um, I think to a certain point, well, of course, you learn boundaries and what you're willing to accept and not to accept. And so I sort of set a standard. But that, again, like I said, that was a learning process. So your question is, how do you come home and shift to that? And I think like anything else, it's just, how would I, you asked me, how would I suggest that?
Even the young guys out there, the young boys,
I would say, I would say give yourself a lot of grace for learning. Okay. What looks like failure, right? It will look like failure is actually just learning. But you will have those moments. But you have to realize that those moments, the burden is on you to either tear everything up that you building, or I gotta come back to it, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, when I got the tools to deal with that, right, I'll deal with that. But I don't have the tools that would be constructive in the moment. I only got tools that would be destructive. So I gotta park that for a second. And there's a lot of times you're gonna feel like a sucker, like, I really don't want to park that, but you know what I'm saying? But the burden is on you to tear your thing down or not. That's yours. Like, that's what I mean. I ain't got no magic bullet for them. They know what it is. It's tough, but that's yours. That's your burden. They gonna keep doing what they doing, right? It was meant to trigger you.
So my question, and again, I'm asking for myself too, because I'm still trying to navigate like this quote unquote professional world. I'm in school now to get, all the degrees and all of that stuff. Like, even working in organizations and things like that. I'm starting to learn to navigate that in the way that you're saying. But what I'm afraid of also as well while doing that, do you ever feel like you're losing yourself, like you're losing pieces of yourself while doing that?
Yeah, the honest answer is yes, you will. And I got to a point, I got nursing, and I, like I said, I've been a leader. And so it takes, especially in the OR, if you ask anybody, if anybody ever worked in hospitals, academic medical centers, anything, OR, the hospital is special in itself. The OR is its own special place, right? It is the elite of the elite. It's the surgeon, it's the nurse who's got special skill sets. She's got special knowledge. Like, he only wants his one nurse. Like, it's a power dynamic in itself that's unreal, right? And so navigating and surviving in that as a Black man was special in itself, right? But it take a lot of what I said, a lot of parking it, right? And in that parking it, you start to feel like you're losing yourself. And I got to the point where I'm like working 60, 70 hours a week. And I actually had I had a mental breakdown. That's what brought me. That's how I first ever discovered Black Men Heal. I had like a panic attack. I know it now, an anxiety attack. It felt like I was dying at the moment. But I realized, like, I couldn't run from who I was becoming anymore, right? Like, I had to really face it. I was trapped. Like, I couldn't run away from the person I was becoming anymore. So it's like, I just remember feeling the sense of panic, like, nah, that's not where I want to be. But all these compromises in yourself, right, leads you down that road to where you think you started here, but then you got to ask yourself the question, what am I doing this for? Why became my question. That's what really broke me down. Like, why? But why am I doing? I'm looking at my wife. My wife is she don't even want to look at me right now. I'm working 60, 70 hours a week. Like, I ain't doing it for her, even though I'm saying I am. Like, so it just became that thing where it was like, nah, I can't do this no more. And yeah, I had the break. I had that anxiety attack, and that's when I asked myself why, and I found myself saying, all right, we know what the game is. You got to play the game, right? And this is a popularity contest. Um, but why are you doing it, and who are you doing it for? And that's when I started to change my mindset of I'm not doing it for my own personal achievement and success, but I need to do it with the focus on serving other people. And that change from that dynamic shift from being narcissistic was the thing where kind of I escaped having to face myself, so to speak, right? Like it was that moment where all right, now I give myself some new options, some new opportunities, and I don't feel trapped in who I am.
Mm. You spoke a word right there, man. You spoke a word. As you talked, I heard a lot of like not mental health language, healing language of like boundaries, narcissism, and all of these different things. Can you think about like childhood and now when you look back on some of these things and how it looked back then, like, oh, I ain't even realized that, or I ain't realized that. Like, how do you look at the younger you now?
it, it was so normal, bro. Like it was so, and that's the thing. Like that was the combination of the anxiety attack, that it had become so normal that when I finally woke up, it was hard to imagine, like, yo, that's him.
Wow.
Like that's you. Like, ew. Like, nah. Like that's you. So it's like that moment that I realized that, yo, I used to, I grew up in North Philly. My family is notorious, like, for who they are. And we used to, as a family, it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I knew my uncles was gonna go out and get drunk for the weekend, and they was gonna rumble whoever in the neighborhood. They was gonna rumble family. Like it was gonna happen Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I came to expect that, right? And when I was young, I remember all that anxiety around the fights and it coming to getting ready to come to the weekend. But then I remember like it just became like this what we do. And it became exciting just to get out and rumble.
Mm.
Like it became normal for my responses to be aggressive and angry. Like that's how we communicated with each other. So yeah, for so long, I ain't I ain't think anything was wrong. And especially when it came to trying to connect and communicate with a woman. I mentioned after I had my panic attack, and I had I was a newlywed, so like that was also added to it. Like I was learning marriage, and I was failing at it bad, miserably. And so I'm like, damn, like, yo, that's my pop.
Mm.
like,
Mm.
like that's like
Mm.
that's it. Like, yo. And I remember I remember I couldn't stand that. But yeah, that's him. So yeah.
Nah, man, you said a mouthful right there, and I want to come back to a few of them, but you talked about uh just normalizing like drinking in spades, and I feel like, and you didn't even say spades, but I'm just assuming spades because I'm now triggered into my like childhood of like spades and those
Right.
people getting killed over spades and like really being mad at one another. I don't and I just had a person on the podcast talked about some of the things you used to survive. Like she used to work in the clubs. Shout out to Princess. She used to work in the clubs as a bartender, and some of the things she used to survive in the clubs was if a person saying hello or they trying to do something, they trying to finesse how to get money out of you, pickpocket you, whatever the case may be, sex, whatever. So now when she using that protection mechanism to protect from that, and it's still around, and she's not in the clubs, and it could come off like, oh, you a bitch, or you why you got an attitude, or all of these different things. But that protected me back in the day.
That's the default. That's the default, right? Like I always say, and that's what's crazy, right? Like as a nurse, I think in medical terms, so I think of the body's natural defense is our skin, right? Our immune system. Like we know what those are, but I don't think too many times we realize what our spiritual bodies or our soul, what that defense mechanism is. And that's our ego, right? And that ego, we build that character armor is what we build to survive. And then that armor, like a knight, becomes part of us and we don't realize it's even there no more. That's just what we using all the time, right? And we ain't paying attention to what kind of calluses it got, or you know what I'm saying, how hard it became. Like it's just, it is what it is. This is where I'm at. And I think that's where for a lot of people I hear healing stories, I think that's the moment I think we all have, is that ego gets stripped away, right? And that protection go away, and it's like, oh shit. And I think that's the defense between us and God, to be quite honest. I think that's the block.
Nah, you so right. Sometimes you don't even realize that armor it's doing its job. So
it's doing its job.
It's nothing wrong. It's nothing happening. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Right. I mean, the body's natural defenses is immune system, right? It's for you get inflammation, so to speak. Inflammation is an immune response to help us. It also can kill you, right? It also can kill you. It's trying to help, but it can do too much. And I think sometimes our ego do too much.
Nah, you're so right, man. You hitting it on the nail. So it's a hood in every city, right? It's a hood. You can't go nowhere where some of the communities, we come from the same story, the same stuff. Talk about how you transformed and you did your healing, right? But now you look at, it's the same community you came from, right? But you're looking at it so differently, and it's like you almost in panic mode, like, yo, y'all don't see what's going on right now. Like it's not supposed to have trash, and this not supposed to be like happening right now.
Yeah, that's I think that's I grew up a Jehovah's Witness too, right? So I'm familiar with evangelizing. I'm familiar with the Bible. I'm familiar with religion in general because I had to study it. You know, if you're familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses, like it's a regimen of studying and really digging deep. And I was a young minister, so I say that to say is this thing when you know, when you first get into the religion and you get all this new information and this new insight and perspective, and you become zealous, right? You become, and you can get to a point where you become overzealous to where you easy to point out all the problems and, man, it should be like this, and this person's not following the Bible right, and you know, and when you have this perspective and this breakdown of the ego, that initial response is to be like the superhero. Oh, I see it. I see it. I see it. But then you realize that's not sustainable. It's not helpful
at all. And they not listening to you.
it's not sustainable nor helpful. So it's just like, I guess so to speak, and I'm Muslim now, but so to speak, how Jesus would say that's the cross, right? Like that's bearing the burden of seeing it, not really having the power to control things. And I think that's part of humanity, right? And that's part of realizing that we don't have control over everything, and we're not really superheroes. And I had to learn that through nursing. So there's a lot of things that you had to give up and just do your best, right? Like, just do your best. And I think part of doing your best is continuing to get better. Because I do think when you continue to get better, the people around you get the examples, right? And I think that's what's most important, because I think people don't want to fail or look wrong in front of us, But if they get the examples, then they can go home and practice and fail in private, you know. And I think that's what people want to do. I don't think they want people shouting at them, this is wrong, this is what's going on. But they do want examples of what it's supposed to look like.
No, and I think, like you said, you made the impossible look possible, and now you done gave so many people hope. So I actually wanted to make sure I commended you on that too, from returning the life into something. And again, you're not changing who you are. You're just changing the car that you use to get to whatever destination you're trying to get
That's
to.
it. That's it. Adding some more tools, right?
That's
like
it.
when I went to prison, I was illiterate. I was
Mhm.
borderline illiterate, and I was smart. Like I said, I was into the Bible, so I studied the Bible, right? Like I was doing all that. But when it came to actual school and habit, I should say, still I was not good at good habits, right?
Mhm.
And that's what's crazy about. I think that's the sort of the unlocked jewel of prison that I don't want to glorify, but you go and you strip down those old habits and you start new habits,
You're
right?
supposed
And
to.
you're supposed to. If key point, right? It ain't all about pinochle.
Mhm.
But but anyway, yeah, you supposed to, and if you're doing what you're supposed to do, man, like you start those new habits that you didn't formerly have. And I think once you start habits and start making these things a part of your daily process, you realize that you got to add tools to your tool bag. You can't keep using the same tool for every job, right? Like, and that's kind of how I look at it. Like a hammer could be used as on a demolition crew, or it could be used with a carpentry crew, right?
Mhm.
Destruct or build or construct. And but you can't keep trying to use a hammer to fix plumbing, right? Like you gonna have to get new tools. So I think of it the same way. I didn't really have any tools besides, you know, I knew how to sell drugs, and I know how to pull a pistol.
Right.
So
No, and that was one of the next questions I was going to ask you. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing, like that stint in prison, and what you were going through mentally while you were there, and how it affected you.
so yeah, I went I went 2000. So my crime happened in 2000. My crime was robbery, armed robbery. And I was caught in Germantown, and I I guess I went, yeah, 2000. I went and did a stint in the county, got bailed out, and I was on the street for 3 years.
Mm.
So I was on the street putting the case off, paying the lawyer a little bit, postponing here, thinking I was gonna get out of it, really not paying attention, scared to death.
Mm.
Um, so I did that for 3 years, and then finally, actually in 2002, 2001, I caught another case and sat in the county for a year for attempted arson case, which I didn't have participate in, but two police officers went to court and testified that I was there. And so I had to sit for that 10 months to fight that case, and I was exonerated for that. But then I went back in 2003, and that's when I was convicted. And my first prison, I went to Laurel Hollins, which is out in Somerset County, which is the hospital of the state. So
Mm.
all the life of prisoners, all the older guys, been there forever. They sent them there to finish out their years, on the older people unit.
Mm.
Um, and so that's my first experience with becoming like a CNA, so to speak, a nursing assistant. Because I would take the guys to their meals, take them to the doctors, help them out around. That was my job. So I got to sit around and play chess with them. Just like I'm talking here, sit here and talk with you. I'm talking with them, and one of the questions, I'm always intrigued on, like, I'm sitting there watching somebody with life, like chill. Like, how you able to chill?
Right.
And I realized they ain't, I mean, they ain't chilling to some as some degree, right? Because at the end of the day, each man would tell you, like, you gotta be able to you gotta be able to be okay with what you did, right? And you gotta be able to see the value in giving up your life for what you did. And I don't think to a man, nobody, I don't, the toughest of the toughest. I ain't seen them say it yet, man. And I sat with a lot of people. I sat with a lot of people, man. And I ain't seen one of them be okay with exchanging that yet. I really haven't. And we can play all the little tough stuff while you want to, man. Listen. Y'all talk what y'all want to talk. Listen, I'll tell a story first. Don't make me tell on y'all. I seen what y'all do up there. I seen what y'all do up there. Nah, ain't nobody okay with that. So yeah, I got a good experience up there. I actually went to this training program to do floors. Like, I stayed trying to being active, doing something. So I went to like this trade school to do floors. And then I ran like the prison, like the anger management courses and stuff like that for like the unit managers. So I would run like the programs, talking to guys, and kind of how I got transferred. They call themselves doing me a favor and transferring me closer, but they transferred me to Hunterdon, which is one of the older, worst prisons in the state. But I got a little closer to home. They sent me about an hour. Can't complain. Got one or two more extra visits out of it.
Right. That mean a lot too. While you over there too.
Hey man, that 1 or 2 extra came through. So I sat there for a while, for 2 years. And man, I eventually came down to Graterford, and at Graterford, that's when I started taking my first little college courses. And it got exposure to college through Villanova. And actually the program that Wallow probably using from the marketing class, that Villanova class, you working the hell out of it, Wallow.
So because he said he had like a big book that he was writing everything down for when he got out that he was going to start to use.
I can see. It's clear. It's clear. It's clear. Hey, that was what he was supposed to do, man. And yeah, I took that marketing class up in Villanova, and that was my first exposure to it. And yeah, came home and tried to get to work.
Man, no, salute to you with that, because I believe, like, I've been like what do you call it, in the holding cells, been handcuffed, but I never been like in prison. And I think that's that story, or your life, you being the further you go, the more hope you give to brothers that either are in your position or that could be in your position, and you can say something to stop them. So I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that, because it means a lot to the next generation and the current generation. Because mind you, like you said, you went to school and did Wallow, he just out here marketing. You like, nah, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get that. Nah, like, you can kind of step by step playbook, like, hey, I mean, I'm making it possible, so ain't no limits. And I got a felony. For people that say they got felonies and it's like, yo, they not hiring or they not doing it, it's some truth to that, but you can show them like, yo, no, it's a version of the truth that can work for you too.
Yeah, I think that part, right? Like, it's I think to increase the options, right? Like, because that's what it was about for me. Like, I was supposed to stay down North Philly and sell drugs, man. That's what I was supposed to do, man. I remember when I dug into the life and said that's what I do. And it wasn't because I wanted to. It was just, that I felt like that was my only options, and I didn't see anything else besides that. And so I feel like that's the part of life, especially when we talk about getting this perspective and seeing everything wrong. I think that's the goal, right? Is to not leave pointing out what's wrong, but leave pointing out structures on how to fix what's wrong, right? Like, so I think that's the whole goal and journey at this point.
That was gonna be my last question about it, because again, you're looking at it when you in it, just like the armor. When you in it, you don't realize that it's on. Now that you outside, you could kind of look at it from a different perspective. So my question revolves around, and if you don't have an answer on it and it's something that you got to think about, it's all right. That's a real complex question. How much do you attribute to the things that you do, the things that you did that landed you in prison, to your own doing and the environment and the circumstances that, created you doing them, if that makes sense?
Ooh, and I do have an answer to that, and it's salacious. Yes, I do have an answer to that. Oh, that's a good one, man. That's a good one. That's a whole nother conversation, man. And without offending too much, and with taking accountability for myself, I'm gonna keep it mild. But I'm gonna say it is a known fact that the most important years to set a child's temperament and its habits are between the ages of 0 and 5. Newborn and 5 years old is the years that you can be most impactful, to give a child what it is that they need to sort of set the temperament, so to speak. Now, after that, what choices the child makes is theirs. I will say that, looking back at my family history, my father being on drugs, at a point in my life, my grandmother's relationship with my grandfather. My grandfather ran numbers in North Philly, owned cleaners and cabs, while my grandmother was his mistress, and he had a whole family and wife and children in politics. So I ain't stand a goddamn chance. I ain't standing a damn chance.
And again, that wasn't even just about the family that you came from. I mean, the environment, like the Black community environment, some of the things we celebrate, trauma, all of that stuff.
So what I'm trying to say is that starts to mushroom out, right? Because if my family is celebrating some of those, and this family over here is likely in the same community, and we share some of those ideas and cultural habits, like it becomes a community thing. Like, so it's just like, I gotta come through. When you think about the stuff that we gotta come through our family habits, we gotta come through our community habits, right? Just the mushroom, just to find out, like, who am I? What,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'm gonna keep it decent. This is
that was a good answer, because you don't. I was just talking to my wife about that the other day, about we focus so much on the roads that grew through the concrete, but we don't take enough time to talk about the concrete that the roads had to grow through, and how to like manage that. Like we celebrate the fact that you grew through it, but not the fact that you shouldn't have to go through that. Like it's not supposed to be like that.
Yeah, and that's what's weird too, right? And I'm glad you used that analogy, because if let's just say this, so to speak, and it's maybe I'm oversimplifying this, but I'm going to use this analogy. If a flower isn't blooming, isn't growing, you don't change the flower, do you? You change.
The flower's gonna be the flower regardless.
You change the flower bed, right? You change the soil that's around the flower. So many of our solutions today are primarily primarily focused on freeing people individually, that we put little focus on what we're doing as a whole, as an environment, as a community. Like some of these cultural norms that we normalize, right? And culture is just another language, right? Well, no, I don't want to say another language. It is language. It is all things that we value bound up into a language of behavior. So those behaviors tell us what's acceptable and what's not. And some of the behaviors that we've normalized are not okay. They're not okay. They're affecting us, right? And so they're affecting the children and the environment in which they're growing up in. And so until there's a larger conversation about that environment, I think what you asked and a really tough look at it, I think, yeah, I think we could continue to have the same problems, right? I think that's a great question, because I certainly do. I didn't stand a damn chance.
You bodied that culture definition, by the way. That was a fire definition. I'm gonna go back and we're gonna clip that up. It was newlywed, wifey. You said you talked about all of the things like starting out and how you had to like rearrange it. What would you tell the first year person of your marriage at the stage you're at now? Like, what advice would you give them?
The advice I would give them, man, I'm gonna be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself and what you can do and what you can't do, right? Because if you're not, she's expecting you to do it. And so there's certainly, I think, yeah, there's nothing like a wife, right?
Yeah.
Like you, like there's nobody that can hold you more accountable than besides yourself. Outside of yourself, there's nobody else that can hold you more accountable. And sometimes you can run from yourself. It's easy to run from yourself. We do it all the time. We go shopping, we do drugs, we can do it all. But if you got a good one and she holds you accountable, you can't run from her.
No, I'm with you. I'm still in the newlywed. We've been together for 10 years, but we just got married last July. I'm sorry. July.
Congratulations, bro.
Thank you. So that's why I personally take some of this stuff for myself, as well as try to put it out for people to, like, utilize in their lives. So I definitely realize that I have to be honest, like you said, with myself, and don't set expectations that I'm not ready to live up to.
Yeah, that ain't gonna help. It's not gonna help anybody. Like, it really ain't. And I think that was a fair thing about this relationship and why I decided to get married. I think that we both agreed that we're, even though we want to be married, so for me, I grew up with my mother and father. Even though my father was on drugs, we did grow up together. So that was the example that I knew, right, is to get married. I didn't know healthy, functional marriage, but I knew marriage was the way to go. And so we set out both thinking that we wanted to set our paths for ourselves. We didn't want it to look like anybody else's, right? We didn't want to make a relationship that looked like my parents or her parents, but just our relationship. And we decided that even though we were getting married, that we weren't obligated to one another, right? There was no expectation to force us to be here. But certainly we want to be here as long as we wake up and choose to want to be next to each other, right? And support each other. And we both realize that, we know in the world, like, you can't do anything by yourself. Ultimately, the greatest form of intelligence is cooperation, right? Like, you need to cooperate emotionally and be emotionally intelligent and mature enough to cooperate with another human being. If you can't do that with your woman, I sure as hell don't want to do business with you. So So yeah, I think you had to learn that level of cooperation to set those expectations of why you both there, right? Like we're here to serve each other and try to do something better together with each other, and not necessarily um being narcissistic.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those words of wisdom, man. I think a lot of more young men need to hear it, because I feel like with I don't even like villainizing music or whatever, but just culture wise, we need to show more like
Right.
support of like marriage and unity, as opposed to like F that, like, yo, I'm worried about my own getting mines. What is it? MOB. I don't know if you know if they
Yeah,
use
like
MOB no more.
I can't even figure out how it's cool to like I get it, right? Because I've been there. Like we all been there. Like
Right.
I get it that it's like, it's hard to find somebody you trust, right? And you've been hurt before. Like we know what the deal is. Like, but we ain't about to turn all that hurt into something cool. Like
Right.
you ain't about to sit here and sell me that it's cool to be alone and
Right.
cool to hit everything every night that you don't even know and got no connection with. Like
Right.
that ain't that ain't cooler than what I got. But that's cool though.
But it's what you said though about like we turned something cool that wasn't supposed to be, and honestly, I do think that we all yearn for it. And as men, I say we let brothers get away with certain things that we wouldn't let women, like dudes to snake you, do something to you, and they'd be like, oh, all right, no, that's bro. Like we can't, we got a little, situation, but we got past it. But when a woman's like, no, I had to cut her off. Da, 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 da.
He ain't came, his money ain't came back right in years.
You still waiting for your come around. Nah, that is facts, man. So as we close out, tell me what's next. What's next for you? What's the plans? What's the goals? You already made, you just making it out of prison and being alive in from the communities that we come from is already a blessing. So everything else you do is extra. But what's your goals and plans for you?
So me and I met Doug, and I met you guys at the Black Men Hill Gala. I was actually there that night, and I was there in representation for an organization that I started, Head Right Wellness. And so this year I'm focused on Head Right Wellness and trying to train brothers and sisters in mental health first aid training, just so that we can bring some conversation and normalize the conversation around mental health. And as we talked about culture, start to bring some language around what culture is and what are we communicating to each other non-verbally, right? And so I want to be able to start those conversations, and hopefully I can team up with Black Men Hill and brothers and sisters who start that conversation and go out and start to try to heal others. Will first come through, do their own healing through, you know what I'm saying, therapists who look and sound like them. And so from my medical perspective, that's how I kind of think. Like, you guys are doing that secondary level of care. I kind of want to do that primary care of trying to get people to start the conversation and hopefully create a pipeline to that they get there before they get to that third and fourth level, and hopefully not prison or being in these institutions or hospitals being drugged up and given programs that's only meant to be transactional and not really meant to help our people. So that's what I'm trying to work on for 2022. God bless me. It's been a challenge so far.
Nah, I'll say this, and I always try to make sure I can lend myself to anything that I could do to help and assist with Head Right Wellness. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm there, especially love speaking to young men and speaking and group facilitation. We gotta have you in King's Corner, man.
That's vice versa, man. I told Doug I've been there. I've been a champion from the beginning, man. I love everything y'all do. So anything that I can help and support with, man, it's done.
Yeah, and this was my version of it before I because I went through Black Men Hill and then I wound up getting on the team or whatever. But before Black Men, I was doing the podcast, like you said, having that conversation, being that introductory version, bringing brothers on like yourself, like, hey, this conversation can happen between two men. And then
Yes.
whatever you choose to do with that moving forward, whether that be therapy or going to school or whatever you decide to do, I just want it to be a conversation in some capacity.
Man, well, I would love to come back, man.
Yes, sir. And I'm putting them out 2 to 3 times a week now, so I'm gonna need some reoccurring guests.
I'm here, man. I'm here. You see, I can listen. I saved something for you, man. I try to get it within this hour.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. And on that note, I'll make sure to put information if y'all want to connect with Head Right Wellness. Do you got like the any pages you want them to follow or anything like that?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram. It's Head Right Wellness. Each of those are underscored, separated. Head Right Wellness. We also on the internet, www.headrightwellness.com. You can visit us there. You can sign up for one of our mental health first aid trainings there. You can or email me at headrightwellness@gmail.com. Contact me there. My telephone number is 267-607-1950. If you need to get in contact with me with anything else, Black men specifically around nursing, any questions about the health field industry, ladies as well. So yeah, I'm willing to lend myself in any way in service to see us heal.
And on that note, make sure you follow, subscribe, share, comment on the podcast, and remember that this platform has never been about a replacement to therapy. It's an alternative place where people share therapeutic stories. Thank you for listening.